The quality of mental health support that you offer your employees matters. ReechUs gives every employee simple, ongoing video access to a therapist of their choice so they can get the help they need when they need it for as long as they need it.
Okay, so I think we've got enough people where we can kind of kick this off. Welcome everybody: Zara, Yvonne, Alice, Jimway, Lizzie, Amber, Kate, Gemma, Taylor, and Dawn. My name's Jamie. I am the founder of a company called ReechUs, and put very simply, what we do is we help companies get better mental health support. With me today, I have the fabulous Sophie Wardell, who is going to do a very mini self-intro.
Is that my cue? So yes, I am Sophie Wardell. I am the people director at a full service law firm called Higgs LLP. I've worked in HR for approximately 20 years. I've worked in the legal sector for 15 years, and prior to that I worked in financial services. I do a lot of work around inclusion. It's one of my passions, and around mental health and well-being. I genuinely believe that people should enjoy being at work and should feel safe at work, and that everybody should have the opportunity to get the most out of the time that they spend working, simply because you're at work a lot, and it's something that I work very hard to achieve. So that's me.
Thank you, Sophie. And also we have the fabulous Kirsty Birch, who is going to do a little self-intro now, that side.
Okay, I'll keep it sweet, guys. I'm obviously Kirsty Birch. I'm the founder of Work It Well, and I specialise in workplace well-being, mental health and performance. I do it very differently, probably differently to most people, but that's not a bad thing, is it? So I'm also a qualified accountant. And just yesterday, you didn't notice, I actually got shortlisted on the Workplace Wellbeing Award. So I'm actually quite buzzing today, yes. But echoing what Sophie just said, I'm all about making sure people feel at their best so they can perform at their best. And the good thing with being in finance is that you can demonstrate that with a lot of ROI in the right way and make sure you get the leadership support. So I'm all about that.
Fabulous. Look, I just want to thank everybody that is attending today. We had a little chat in advance, and initially we were going to do this more as a sort of talk, as a seminar, but we think that there's a lot of value in collaboration. And so if there is something that someone would like to ask, or something that someone would like to say, feel free to click on the little react button at the bottom of Zoom, and you can raise your hand. And then at the first opportunity I have, I'll bring you into the conversation, unmute your microphone, and have a chat. Until then, please mute your microphones, just so that we don't get any background noise. So we are here today mainly because I've been having a lot of conversations over the last 6 months. And right now, especially in the last couple of weeks, the organizations that I speak to fit in one of two camps. They are either looking at 2025 with very little in the terms of a wellbeing strategy or any initiatives in place, or they have things in place that they've been running through 2024 that haven't necessarily been used or haven't necessarily moved the needle. And so what I wanted to do is bring two extremely smart people, far smarter than me, into the conversation and see if we can try and unpack this a little bit. Look forward to 2025 and think, okay, what wellbeing initiatives would be useful? What would be valuable? But also, what is the best way to implement them so that they're effective? And so the first question I wanted to pose, and I'm going to push this towards Sophie first, is very simply, and I'm wording this correctly, do you believe that an organization has a responsibility to keep their staff healthy? Not opportunity, we'll do that in a bit.
It's a pretty resounding response from me. So every employer has a duty of care to ensure that the people that work in their organization are, their physical health is protected, and the same should be the case for their mental health. It's not separate. They absolutely should be looking not just around initiatives for well-being, and taking responsibility for it in that sort of tick box health and safety way. It should be about prioritizing psychological safety. And I think that every single organization, in order to fulfill sort of their end of the bargain, their contract with individuals, should be looking at ways to ensure that each person in the organization is psychologically safe. So 100%, they do have a responsibility. And that's a sort of a moral duty, but also a legal obligation.
Kirsty, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, 100% echoing what Sophie's just said then. And I'm also a big believer as well that it's not just the duty of the employer. It does take a lot from the employee too, in regards to being, obviously they need to be able to take accountability to look after their well-being at the same time. But I think the employer, to be able to provide support and equip with tools, like Sophie just said, they do have a legal obligation to do this. So plus it does benefit them at the same time, because if your people feel more valued, more heard, more supported, they're going to be more productive. So I think it is a bit of an element of the two, but like you just said, and Sophie said, the employer does have a lot to do with it, and there's a rule of compliance there, so they do have to make sure they adhere to it.
I'd really agree with that as well, Kirsty, that point you made about it being everybody being accountable, because most people know that with sort of health and safety provisions, everybody is supposed to be looking out for things that could be risks, and that the risks can be mitigated. And I think that sometimes people forget that actually it's incumbent upon everybody to look at people around them and actually to flag if they think that somebody isn't okay. Because especially in a world of remote working and hybrid working, you can't expect it always to be necessarily the manager that picks up on issues or concerns. And actually, and I say this a lot in my work and in social media, if we each take a little bit of responsibility for one another, then it will surface issues faster, but it also means that the issues can be resolved quicker as well.
I agree, and this is what what Sophie's just said, exactly the same. I think you can. I'm one of these big believers that you.
I missed the last part of what you're saying, but I think the sentiment is there. Is ultimately there is definitely value. It's not just a responsibility, but it is also an opportunity. So what I wanted to kind of touch on next is, before we even look at initiatives and the well-being, what I want to talk about is something that Sophie's brought up in the past, which is building that foundation within the organization to make sure that the employees are exposed to a healthy environment. So, Sophie, I want to kind of bring you in here to talk a little bit about that.
So I think what organizations that are thinking about mental health and well-being particularly, what they're getting really good at is bringing in a series of frameworks or structures, policies, all of those things that I would describe as the scaffolding, right? It's really, really important to have those things. You can kind of get them off the shelf. You can say, well, I've got that. I've got the EAP. I've got someone coming in to talk about nutrition. I've got this disparate thing over there. Like, all of those things are great, but there is very little point in having scaffolding if people don't know what the renovation is supposed to look like, if people aren't bought into that. What you're basically creating is almost just this, and I will call it a framework, around nothing and nothing substantive. You need to know what good looks like. You need to be accepting that actually you're probably not perfect. And then you need to dig deep into the places where there are obvious gaps. And a lot of that, one of the things I'm sort of been talking about recently, is accepting that your organization isn't perfect is a really good thing. Like, rather than showboating all of the things you think you do well, actually looking at the things that you don't do well is more powerful. And the only way that you can do that is by actually auditing and being prepared to read the results of what you already have. You actually need to go out to the people that you've created the scaffolding for and said, do you feel that this is making it better? Like, do you care about the things that we have introduced, and what are the things of the gaps that you consider to be the gaps? It's almost, you have to hold the mirror up rather than keep looking out of the window and just bringing in another thing and another thing and another thing. And that's the only way that you can make it something that is genuinely sustainable and that is going to change things and change outcomes. And the other thing I would say is that it's about creating something that is bespoke to your organization. I could look at a manufacturing organization. And some of the things might work in professional services, but probably not all of them. It's not about emulating the things that other people do well. It's about creating something that is bespoke to your organization. That authenticity people will see. They will know if it's a tick box exercise because you've got somebody coming in or you're going for an award. You need to be doing it in a way that's bespoke to your business. And as I said, therefore it's authentic and people will buy into it. That's the process of renovation as I see it.
Brilliant. I'd love to bring Alice in. Alice has put her hand up. Alice, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sorry. I thought I'd just kind of add on the back of what Sophie was speaking about. So apologies. Don't
apologise. It's great.
I just wanted to share because I kind of just backing up what you've just mentioned. I do 100% agree that we do kind of aim automatically to the positives of what we implement in this workplace, dependent on what sector that is. I'm quite new into the financial sector that I've come in. I've only started that since April. So my background is care, residential, challenging behaviour, etc. So coming in from a totally different sector to coming into a financial sector, you do come across different cultural challenges. But at the same time, sometimes you do fear what you're not currently doing. And that's not a bad thing in the fact of it's a good thing to highlight what you might not be doing to implement a positive on the back of that. So it kind of has the reverse effect. So it's just to kind of showcase that it's okay to highlight what we're not doing to get a positive from not so much a negative, but to kind of to have a better outlook and input to support our staff in our workplace. So 100% agree on that.
I completely agree with you, Alice. And it's no different, I think, when you talk about diversity and inclusion. There's no point saying, well, we do all of this really well, tick. That isn't actually that helpful to people. You ought to focus the majority of your efforts into the things that you know you don't do well. And it's really helpful to hear you sort of echo that back because I think it's something that we shy away from. We all want to look like or feel like we're doing all of the right things or that we have all of the answers. And I think coupled with what you said, Alice, it's being prepared to say, I actually don't know. I actually don't know how to fix this. And that's where what you're doing is you're opening the door to your employees and you're listening to their voices. I won't necessarily know what someone straight into the world of work. Let's say there's somebody who's 18 years old who's never worked in a professional service before. I don't know what they need. I need them to tell me. I need to really genuinely actively listen to them and empathize and then go away and try to find a solution that works. But equally, that solution might not work first time around and you might have to iterate it. And it's that listening, and I call it active listening, that is a skill that we ought to be training in our managers in businesses. So rather than them just turning to HR and saying, HR, come quick, we need your help, we need you to fix this thing, come up with a solution. Actually, if they can more readily understand what the issues are and actually sort of do that triage work, listen, give people the space to share, then actually that's part of what Kirsty was talking about, that pulling together to find solutions. But yeah, be prepared that you might not want to hear you might not want to hear what people have to share.
Yeah, I think sometimes it can be more detrimental by not raising it than actually saying, we do this and we do this, but it might not necessarily be that's that one thing that people are looking for. But yeah, no, 100%. I'll be quiet now.
No,
thank you so much, Alice.
People aren't. Yeah, I was just going to say, Alice, absolutely, people aren't sheep. You can't sheep dip people through processes to make them better. You can't have somebody that says, oh, this is what's going on for me, and you just pull that same kind of trick out of the hat. People are human beings. They are consumers. They're adults in the world. They deserve the respect of being treated as individuals in that way.
100%.
Thank you, Alice, and thank you, Sophie, as well. So I want to put a hypothetical to everybody now. I want to say that we're talking about Organisation X, and Organisation X has put everything in place to have a fantastic, supportive, wonderful culture where everything is working perfectly. They're looking forward to year 2025. and they're not entirely sure what they could be doing to make sure that some of the external factors that employees suffer with are being catered for. And this is where I want to bring in Kirsty. So, Kirsty, what do you think is the opportunity when it comes to well-being or additional well-being initiatives for Organisation X?
I think firstly, you need to go and speak to people that are putting the bums on the seats in your workplaces. If you, exactly what Sophie said earlier, if you ask people, they will be more than happy to tell you. The problem is, I find a lot of time, and it's generally comes from up top. And I know we talk about foundations from the bottom, but I have a big issue with people up top, because if you have not got that leadership support behind you, you're probably going to find that none of that feedback is going to be relevant, which is really, really frustrating, because you'll find that a lot of your team will give you, they'll give you the feedback that's going to, like you've just said earlier, Jamie, is an opportunity to make positive changes. Pointless just working on all the things that you're doing brilliantly. And it sounds like that obviously company is doing fantastic as your hypothetical company, but there's so much more. And if we was all perfect, then we wouldn't be always having that development, would we? So yeah, I think ask the people, they'll tell you. And then if you get the leadership support behind it, it makes a huge difference. Big, big difference.
Okay, let's fantastic. So first thing, personalization. Pretty much everywhere that narrative is kind of permeating every single part of this story. Personalization and inclusion. Now, there's a lot in regards to well-being out there. I entered the market about a year ago, and all I did for the first 3 months was research, and I sat there confused most of the time. A lot of people are planning what they can do to support their employees with potentially external issues, financial issues, nutritional issues, making sure they exercise more, making sure they have good mental health support. I'd like, and this could come from Sophie, this could come from Kirsty, or anyone in this group, to give us some examples of things they don't necessarily think work or haven't worked in their experience. Either of you guys can jump up.
I can tell you now, fruit on a Friday, out the window. Certain pizza Fridays, out the window. I think it definitely look, if you're starting to know that your staff are absent quite a lot, you need to find out why they're absent quite a lot. So you need to get them more inclined to want to come to work. So if it means supporting, like you said, financial well-being, if it means supporting mental well-being, if they need more support with their physical well-being, ask your team and adapt it as well. Because like Sophie said earlier, as much as I find that one size does not fit all. So it doesn't matter what kind of organisation you are, you're going to get different. We're all different walks of people. We're all human. We all experience things in different ways. But I think if you've got a culture that you can ask and that actually works for that your workplace, then I think you need to integrate initiatives that are going to be worthwhile investing into. What's the point of going to pay for something if you're not going to get a return on it? It's not going to benefit your employees. I get passionate about this, Jamie. You know I do. It's not going to benefit your employees, and it's not going to benefit as an employer. You're not going to get any return from it. So I think moving forward, 2025, definitely the trends that I'm noticing, financial well-being is huge. I think it's something that you're going to be able to invest into. I think overall mental health is that's not getting any better. In fact, it's increasing. We can see this every single day. We're going through a cost of living crisis. We've got so many things going on in the world now where I think people are just outside influences are impacting the inside workplace now. So I think we need to do a lot more around it. But like you said, physical health involves with mental health. All these corners of well-being are interlinked. If you ask your people, they'll tell you where you need to put your investment. And that's the one thing I can push forward now. Don't just guess, because guessing gets you nowhere.
Dawn has raised her hands. Dawn, we would love your input.
Hello there. I'm just going to pick up on something that Kirsty just said, and I get totally what you're saying about fruit on Friday. For fuck's sake, I think basically what you're saying. However,
I was being polite, but you get what I mean.
I know. I was trying to bring you back down again. I'm going to counteract it slightly, because who doesn't like a chalky biscuit, right? But Jamie's just mentioned the physical health affecting the mental health. I get blown away even by, I'm going to try not to name a charity, but you'll get what I mean in a minute.
Don't do
Let's
it, Dawn.
have a... No, I know. Let's have a coffee morning for X charity with cakes and biscuits, and you can just go, "Phew," because, hello, you know, the sugar, cancer, health thing, right? And I think far too often people see treats as, you know, sweet things as a treat, when actually, goodness, look, I'm overweight myself. I'm not bloody perfect. However, what I'm saying is I would prefer to have healthier options along the way than donuts or
I'm fully with you. I get what you're saying in regards to the intention side. I'm totally with you. My point of that around that is it's just whack that in because it sounds like a good thing to do. And like Sophie said earlier, it's a tick list measure. And when things become a tick list measure, your employees will see through that because it is so transparent. And I can tell you now, you're not going to get any engagement or any kind of interaction from them. I get what you're saying, Dawn. I think if that was there as a genuine intention, brilliant.
I was going to use the same word, intent. Yeah. If the intention is there we actually want to look after your health. So we're not going to offer you biscuits. We are going to put fruit on Friday or wherever. Maybe not on Friday because it'll go off by the weekend. I don't know. You know, it's just a stupid thing. And I didn't want to say you're wrong, Kirsty. I'm not. I'm just saying, actually, if the intent is there to really look after people's health.
Oh, it can be beneficial, hugely.
It can be.
And combined with something like what Jamie offers would be brilliant, because then that would mean that the intention there is to focus on people's physical well-being and, you know, to make sure it's a healthier work environment. 1,000,000%. I see people just do that, though, Dawn. No joke, and do nothing else.
I've been there. I've been in that.
And that's the part where you just feel like, okay, so you've got a room here where people can go and have a breakout, yet no one's using it. Why is no one using it? Well, because no one really comes into the office. Okay, so if no one comes into the office, why have you got something that's offered space? Why don't you do something for the people that are hybrid working? Are you tapping in on them? Are you having an online breakout room where people can chat? So I think it's things like that. It's thinking outside the box and doing something like we just said with intention. Does that make sense, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Dawn for her input as well. So thanks both of you for kind of bringing that to attention. What I would love to drop in right now is talking about mental health support. Pretty much every company in the UK has some form of mental health support. And I'd love, because I know Sophie's commented on some of my posts in the past, to hear her opinion of what currently is out there in regards to mental health support, and maybe highlight some of the obstacles or potentially even the issues with it.
Wow, I mean, that's a massive question. That's a massive question,
sorry.
Jamie. What I wanted to say, no, not at all, not at all. It's a good one. But just reflecting on the question that you asked prior, you asked of Kirsty about what initiatives don't work. I just wanted to add on to that no initiative works. No initiative works if you haven't got people at the top of the business who are role modeling the right things. So you can bring in absolutely anything, just flexibility till the cows come home. You can bring in all of these fantastic initiatives, but if the role models aren't there, if there's no accountability from the top, all of them will eventually just fizzle away because people will start to lose faith in it. If you have people within your organization who are prepared to talk about their own lived experiences, or to help if it's not something they've experienced, help act as an ally to somebody who then actually showcases and helps to essentially bring someone else's story to life, that is the stuff that is really, really powerful. With regards to mental health, you talked about employee assistance programs not worth having. That's a reason why they're free, and usually you get them as part of some other insurance policy that you have. Of course, if it's free, it's probably unlikely to be very good. Most private medical insurers will have a mental health pathway. They can be effective, although a lot of them do take you on a journey straight to CBT, which isn't actually what everybody requires. Every business ought to have a TAME occupational health provider who can provide some additional insights and knowledge. And I will say that something that we introduced recently that has had a really powerful impact, actually, which covers mental health, neurodiversity, hidden disabilities as well. We call it our wellness passport. Sometimes they're called other things. They can be called communication profiles or communication preferences. And what it is it's a document where an employee can set out, it could be a mental health problem or something that they are experiencing or are struggling with. You can capture as much detail or as little detail as they want to provide. And what it does is it allows them to have a living document they can share then with a supervisor or manager, so they're not always having to talk about and explain themselves. It can capture that they may require to take time away from their desk from time to time. They may need to work from home. So it's almost like taking with them something that just sorry, somebody's put one-page profile or snapshot, we call them. Yeah, absolutely brilliant that you have those, Alice. But it's something that we introduced very recently, and the response to it has been really phenomenal. It's very tailored to the individual, but it's that it shows that we care about it, but also that we will work with them to put into words what they're feeling and how they're feeling and what they need in order to make work easier for them. And that's that bespoke angle. If you're going to do anything around mental health support at all, it needs to be bespoke, but you also need to provide support to the people who are giving the support. So if you've got an HR team and you haven't given them access to mental health first aid training, then you're letting them down. Because it is actually, and I've had it in my own career where people share things with you and actually you take that home. You know, if you've got an HR team and you're potentially dealing with people who are struggling or they're surfacing traumas or issues, you know, don't have that be your Friday afternoon conversations, because then that's with you over the weekend. It's some of those small things that actually can have significant impact, and making sure that people know that if actually they're dealing with somebody and it's got to a point where actually they are concerned for that person's safety, that they know, where do I go with this information? How do I best protect that person? You never want to be the last person to speak to someone who potentially is suffering a real crisis. And I think that sometimes people don't necessarily know which part of the toolkit they're meant to go to when they are having those conversations. And yeah, I've seen that in my own career. Kirsty, you were saying yes.
No, nothing. I'm just kind of realistic what you're saying. I see them as that they're wellbeing action plans, and I encourage so many people use these because they are such a good tool to have. But I think hitting on that, Jay, what a lot of people don't seem to do is they don't utilise the EAPs and things like this when they're at the preventive stage. If you use something like that at the preventative stage, you're going to get a lot more out of what the EAP is. And I know you're probably going to come on to that, so I won't reiterate on that.
I'm jumping in on this.
Yeah, I like what Sophie said, yeah.
I mean, okay, so I'm coming in slightly biased. I understand, but I came into the industry because of the problems associated with EAP. EAP is designed. It has low engagement built into it. It is not an accident. It is deliberate. Everything from its user journey to its name, to the systems they put in place, to the contracts they have with the organization. Everything is designed for low engagement. And the reason for that is because smaller providers have almost been brought together into these monster providers that cover up to 15 plus million people at a time, that are then IPO'd and become big companies, and suddenly costs become a big issue. And although I'm not saying that we shouldn't trust EAP providers, we absolutely should. I think we need to be careful who we choose. And as you say, Kirst, there needs to be an agreement with the provider. What are you going to do to help with engagement? Are you going to drop access and disappear?
Yeah, you're spot on. I think you need to have that transparency there, because, you know, just like Sophie said earlier, a lot of these come aligned now with insurance policies and stuff. They're going to mean whack, you know. So you do need to be very clear with what you're going to get from that EAP, how you can utilize it, and then if you're utilizing it at a preventive stage, that's the return you want as a business. You don't want to get to a crisis stage when, I can tell you now, majority of people I speak to are at a crisis stage wouldn't even know what is in their EAP, and they didn't even know about it. That's pointless proceed. That's a waste of money. That's not cost effective at all, is it? So you're right. I think you need to be very clear when you're picking your EAP to make sure what it is exactly you are getting from them.
I think there might be a lack of trust, and this is coming from speaking to a lot of HR and people roles in their EAP and listening to Sophie right now. A lot of the people in those roles, they find themselves almost becoming an in-house counselor. I did a poll the other day. 87% of the HR people that responded said that they felt like the in-house counselor at some point. And when I've spoken to them afterwards and kind of followed up, they said, listen, we want to support someone to get the right support. And I said, okay, well, what support do you currently have? And they said, well, we don't trust the support that we currently have because there's obstacles and there is friction. And all employees have used it in the past and they've been bounced around and they've had to wait up to 9 days for care, and they've been referred to self-help resources, or they haven't been allowed to speak to anybody. So, we've got a comment from Abby. I was in a meeting this morning. Abby, do you want to jump on? We'd love to hear from you.
Hang on, I'm just telling hello.
There we go.
Oh, it's so nice.
Abby.
So nice to meet you, Abby. It's so nice to meet you. I see your name pop up. I see your name pop up a lot on LinkedIn. It's really lovely to meet you.
I didn't mean to hijack it, Jamie. I just thought it was a really interesting point this morning that somebody made, that do companies even want high engagement on their EAPs? It's a nice to have because they can say, look, we've got our EAP, but actually they're concerned about what that reflects back on them if they've got high engagement onto the EAP. Like, is their culture creating this situation where people are going to the EAPs? And I thought it was a really interesting perspective. But actually, I completely agree with everybody else that, you know, we should be utilising them, and they are quite often added on as a tick box exercise, or, as you say, Sophie, free with other things. But I just thought, you know, actually, you know, the motivation from a company to add this on and to actually then promote this service to their staff, there could be like a double-edged sword from, and it goes back to Kirsty's point about leadership. You've got a good culture, good leadership, you're going to encourage it, aren't you, and welcome it. But there's this two-handed kind of situation, or two double-edged sword.
I can see where Abby's coming from, but I do look like that in a different way. I don't know about you, Sophie. I look at that like, well, that's a positive. If it was for me, if I was an organisation and I've got an EAP and people are utilising it at the right stage, to me, that would look like I'm being a responsible employer, because it means that they're doing something at the preventive stage. I'm not having long-term sick. I'm not having absenteeism build up. I'm not having staff turnover because people are unhappy. So to me, that would look like, well, you know what, I would be promoting that as a positive and saying, I've got an EAP in place. It's effective. We're utilising it at the right stage. That's going to be a huge return on investment for other aspects. And likewise, Sophie said earlier, it's not costing me a lot of money to have. So for me, that would be a positive. But like you said, it could well be, a lot of people don't like tapping into it because it can open a can of worms. I get that. But if you open the can of worms at the right stage, it can be very beneficial.
Yeah,
I hope that
it wasn't my opinion, Kirsty. It was
no, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. But I think you have to hear these conversations, like Jamie said. You have to have these perspectives, because this is what our argument probably is all the time, Jamie. I say argument, but it's that kind of conversations that we hear, that you hear, that we all hear all the time. And I think don't look at it as much as a negative sometimes. Look at it as a positive if you implement it at the right stage, that is.
Absolutely.
Tough gig from it, and I know a lot of people, like you said, are thinking that our EAP is worth it. 100% they are if they're done right.
Agreed. It's one of those things, isn't it? EAPs are part of a bundle of initiatives. Initiatives, perhaps the wrong word, but they're a bundle of tools that might work for some people in a set of circumstances. I wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There can be a time and a place, but a lot of the things that we've talked about with regards to well-being, we've talked about the end, the kind of crisis side. And I do think, Jamie, looking back at the question you asked around 2025, I think the more that organisations can talk about building resilience in workforces, creating safe spaces for conversations, creating case studies where, if we go down this path, this will end really, it was real challenges for the individual, but actually if we approach it slightly differently and we get there early doors, and if it starts with they don't attend their team meetings, they start to have the camera off, they take a long time to reply to emails, they never return to calls. It's the identifying early on that something isn't okay with people, or when people you are aware of challenges at home. It could be caring circumstances, it could be that you know someone's got 3 children under the age of 5. The chances are, if you were to do a kind of a risk profile of the people in your organization, they would be falling into a category of people who probably just need a bit more support, flexibility, empathy, compassion than others. And I think if as businesses, as you gear up into what do we want to achieve in 2025, apart from listening to what people say they already want, is actually just look at the people you've got and who your, it seems strange to say your high risk groups are, but there will be some who are just potentially more likely to go under the radar, or who just have a lot that they're juggling. I sort of was speaking to actually somebody earlier today. When you've got this blurring between your work life and your personal life, and I never use work-life balance as a phrase, because I think I said this to you both last week, it's never balanced. It's impossible to have a balance. I'm a working parent with 2 small children. It's about boundaries. And when those boundaries start slipping, that whole ecosystem that is your family and the interconnected ecosystem that is your work can become very out of balance very, very quickly. And I think it's making sure that, and you do it in conjunction with the HR or people team. It's not their job to do this. They are there to advise and support, but having conversations with managers and saying, is there anybody that you're particularly worried about? What are you seeing? And actually mapping that through is can be a really productive exercise to carry out early doors. So you're doing the preventative and the resolution interventions at the same time, and not exclusively.
I don't know if you guys find that if you actually create a culture that's half decent and people actually care about each other, you'll probably find others will pick up on the things that, if somebody's behaviour's changed, like you've just said, Sophie, you'll probably find as a collective, people will start observing more. So it doesn't always fall on one person. It's actually, as a team, we look out for each other. And that's where, if you build a decent culture, you will have that, which is moving forward, Jane, probably in answer to your question at the beginning. I think this is where organisations should be focusing more, is really focusing on what they've got and enhancing on that, because there's so much that can be done positively already with what you've got there. You don't have to have every single initiative in place. Like Sophie said earlier, they're not all going to work if you haven't got the top already, pushing it behind it. So I think if you can focus on what you've got, enhance on what you've got, get the right feedback, have the right conversations, and be a little bit more aware of things, you can make a huge difference in your workplace without it actually costing a lot of money.
But you've hit the nail on the head, Kirsty, with that, absolutely. And whenever you probably get these kind of HR and people surveys that go out, they're always designed to measure levels of engagement. And one of the classic questions is, I would go the extra mile. And people going the extra mile are people that are looking out for each other, people that are engaged, feel that there's an alignment to their values, care about the team. That's your kind of classic happy employee. Now, the minute that engagement starts to come away and people feel either psychologically unsafe, or they feel that the work has lost their meaning, people become increasingly more removed and more selfish, not in a negative way, but you just do, until you eventually say, this, I'm out for me now, we're done, and I'm going to break this contract with this employer. And that's exactly it. The more that you're on that continuum towards, actually, it's no longer about all of you lot, it's actually about me, the harder it is then for any initiative to take root. Whereas if you catch people and they're engaged with the work, they care about the employer, they are looking at their team, that's half the battle.
Yeah, and I think
well said,
Alice has put in a really great comment. Alice, can you just read that out for us, please?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, so I thought it was I find it 2 amazing, very, very strong different factors, in the fact of caring for someone because it's your job, but actually having that genuine care about somebody and how they feel is 2 very different things, and that can be perceived extremely different. But that also shows, if that became an approach to myself, I would feel that they actually care about how I feel, not because they're asking because it's a part of their job. So it's just differentiating between the 2.
And again, Alice, that's very transparent, isn't it? It's really transparent when you've got that there as well, which is we could be here a whole nother day, Jamie, when we go down this path. But I think it's I think Alice is right. Yeah, but you know what I mean? I think it's when you've say got a manager that's a manager because they're in a manager's position because it's the next step up, or you've got a manager that's there that's had the right training, has got more empathy and will have emotional intelligence. We're in a different role there. So I think you're right. I think we can, it's really transparent. But yes, Alice is spot on there. I think it really does show.
Thank you, Alice. I want to. We have overrun this talk already, and I do want to just give people a few opportunities for questions if there were any. But I wanted to round up very quickly and just say, look, the goal of this was to look forward to 2025 and question, you know, how do we make sure that we're not wasting money? Because I speak to a lot of organizations that have got a lot of stuff going on. And I think you two have made incredible points that maybe the first thing is to look inwards. Maybe the first thing, as Sophie says, is to lift the mirror up. Maybe it's to start opening up, start talking, start collaborating, and start creating something where anything that you add is going to be used and it's going to have a bit of benefit. So let's kind of open up to questions. Is there anyone that wanted to jump in? I saw a note pop up from somebody.
I think it was Amy just saying she's got a shoot off.
Yeah, Amy had to go.
Oh, yeah, Amy Polly's gone. Anyone else got anything that they wanted to ask? Maybe anything particularly about 2025, anything that we've talked about, anything to do with well-being or initiatives or anything?
I'll go if that's okay.
Yes,
I
Dawn.
guess it's a comment rather than a question, but like we touched earlier on, we can see those organisations that are tick boxing. I used to be chairperson of the health networking group, a very large American bank, and the amount of conversations that I was part of, and you'd just pick up on those that genuinely cared and those that were going, yep, we've done that, don't have to do that anymore, all right, next. You felt that, but it's amazing how it happens, and I just wonder, you know, how we can do more to change that approach, so that it's not just a tick box.
Education, in my opinion. I think you can always enhance on someone's skill set by you're walking. I go to, I'm not going to name names, guys, but I go to speak to lots of organizations who top leadership are absolutely crap. When I mean crap, there is nothing, like they've got no intention of supporting their people, right? It's very hard for me to even get a budget over the line in regards to well-being. And when you actually speak to them, it's some of it is just embedded into them. It's different generations. There's a lot of things that can go into different cultures, so many different things. But I think once you start actually speaking to people and you having conversations, I don't know if you find, Jamie and Sophie, and probably everyone in this room, when you talk well-being, people don't assume it to be with stress. They don't think it's or mental health. They don't think stress. They just think all the negative stuff around sort of a mental health condition. Like they'll think of schizophrenia, they think of bipolar. They won't think of the every single day things that we're experiencing in a workplace. And because of that, they don't associate with it. Once you start having conversations with people and you start opening up and educating them a little bit in regards to, are you stressed at work? Are you burnt out at work? And then you get those conversations where the leaders say, cool, yeah, I'm dealing with this every single day. Yeah, and I can see what my workforce are dealing with. That's mental health. That's where you have an issue. And I think it's the education around it. I think just distinguishing between a mental health condition and what is poor mental health, even just that could make a huge difference. And I find that a lot. So I don't know if you find that. I think it's the lack of education there, you know? And it can be really something basic, you know, really something basic to shift it. Unfortunately, some people don't want to hear that.
I think that also, and it's an absolutely brilliant and valid point that you make there, Kirsty. I think that people also think of well-being is here, and then inclusion's here, and then neurodiversity's here, and then there's all of these different, and they're not. They're all of them. Everything. You know, the way you work, the way you set up work for people, the way decisions are made, are they transparent, the policies that you've got, the empowering, the way that people are dealt with when they make a mistake, you know, is it a blame culture? All of those things, all of that is part of the wellness and the well-being of the people around you in your organization, the way that your managers operate and act towards each other, the kind of cliques and divisions, the barriers, and even things, and this is something that cropped up in conversations that I was having recently. You have your kind of rules within an organization, and then there is a whole separate hidden rules. So you might have a dress code policy, or you might not, but it's this sort of, well, it's just common sense, it's just how we do things. Yeah, but nobody told me, it's not written down. And it's how you bring people into your business, making sure that what they actually experience is what you told them they would experience. And that whole way through, it's just making sure that there's this consistency and sort of even as basic as fairness and respect that is running through the veins of the business. It isn't about one initiative here and one training program here. It's absolutely every touch point that you have, which is why when you actually ask people, you might find that the fruit frustrates them and isn't, you know, really aggravates them because they don't believe in it. You might find that a handful of people think it's great, yeah. but it's that, you know, are you actually asking those questions and checking that people feel safe or otherwise? Alice, I don't
know if you guys find people think it's fluffy. As soon as you mention the word well-being, people find it fluffy. Absolute rubbish, you know what I mean? And that's the biggest thing.
This was brought up recently in a poll.
Oh,
yeah,
mate, 100%. So like, it grinds my gears, guys, on a different level. You're probably going to, now, we were still recording. I can be honest enough, but I am still recording.
Yeah, we're still there.
I think it's one of those things. I think it's the fluffy stuff, as way I look at it, works when you sort out the problem, sort out the main issues, and then the fluff things that people assume is fluffy, like the mindfulness, which I value a lot. So it's not fluffy in that respect at all. Is it going to fix the problem? No, because you've got to address the problems first. So I think in answer to your question, Dawn, I think a lot more could be done around education. If it impacts how you think, if it impacts how you feel, and it impacts how you behave, we need to be doing a lot more about it, because that is mental health in itself. And I think that's where we come across, Sophie, is probably a lot of people don't realise that all of these things that we deal with every day. I'd go and do a workshop and I can ask every single person in that room, have you ever experienced stress? Every person to put their hands up. Well, then you've all had poor mental health at one stage. And that's it. Yeah. And that's what I don't think people realise. So I think just opening up the floodgates and just understanding that it's a natural thing to have, and it's how you manage it that continues to make it a positive experience. That's where the difference is.
Agreed.
Sorry, guys, I want to get
Alice wants to ask.
I want to get to Alice, but I also want to get to Zara. Yeah, Zara got in there before you, Alice. I'm sorry, but Zara's put on the train listening. I had a question. If you are a 100% remote organization, what initiatives could work well besides the one profile thing? Well, Zara.
This is Jamie's opportunity now.
I didn't plug this. This wasn't. I didn't make Zara say this. But there is an organization called ReechUs, and ReechUs gives every employee access to a counselor or therapist of their choice, ongoing access, very fast access with the same person. We also give employees access to nutritionists by one-to-one lives and personal trainers through a 90-day program, and financial coaching quarterly. It's employee, health professional, that's all it is, and that's what we do. So just wanted to pop that in there. Oh, and it's all remote as well. So that's one initiative that could potentially work. Alice, you had a question.
well sold there, Jamie.
Yeah, cheers.
So no, it was just a quick one. I'll keep it short because again, I'm mindful of time. It was just to kind of back up of what Kirsty and Sophie were saying about the understanding about the term well-being, and that people may automatically jump on about thinking about whether they have schizophrenia, etc., but also thinking outside the box if they've got ADHD traits, and actually whether that person is quite naive about it, or because they're not showing that genuine care. Actually do a bit of research yourself before you're actually going back to them with suggestions of how it can support them. So I say this only from my own experience of dealing with and working with people that have got ADHD in the past. And one of my members of my team, he had ADHD and he struggled with genuine day-to-day tasks. And it was more about that was affecting his well-being more so over some things that may have been going on at home, etc. So it was my duty of care, as we've mentioned before, that to research about ADHD, of how I can support him to my best ability, to basically get the best of like the working methods that he can then bring to the company and also support us as a team. So it was kind of stripped down of what functions work best for him. Does it mean that he needs to kind of come away, focus on one task for half an hour at a time and then change tasks because he may get bored easy? And that's fine. But at the end of the day, if the outcome is that he gets the job done, fantastic. And it's kind of a praise on him as well. So it's kind of just thinking outside the box a little bit and not labeling well-being as just, oh, actually, mental health could be a really, I mean, obviously it can be, like schizophrenia, etc., that can impact that, but then like really bring it back down a little bit and really strip back to actually what the problems are. So that was just an experience that I had, so I thought I'd just share that.
Thank you for sharing that, Alice. It was a really lovely example as well, but I really appreciate that. It's a generous share, and it sounds like you did all the right things as well. And I'm sure that he was very grateful to you for your time and attention.
As someone with ADHD, I can completely empathize of what this person was going through. It isn't easy. Fortunately, a lot of adults are currently being diagnosed as having ADHD. We've kind of gone our entire lives with brains that don't really work the same. We get bored incredibly easily, as you said, and finding our kind of navigating our way through normal life and the day can be quite challenging. I'm not entirely sure what the solution is in the workplace right now, apart from a lot more awareness, maybe some management training. I'm sure Kirsty's got something that she could kind of throw in here as well.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is I'm definitely getting a lot more inquiries around neurodiversity training. People are more getting on board with actually how can we adapt and support everyone to make it inclusive in our workplace. So it's definitely one to move forward with next year. I've also noticed that Gemma has also had a question on here, probably for all of us as well. What would one focus that you would, for every organisation, in your opinion, for 2025? So I'll head over to you guys first because my door is knocking and I just want to grab this, so I'll mute myself quickly while you two answer.
Yeah, so Sophie, do you want to answer that one first? One thing an organisation could focus on in 2025.
Speak to your people. Give your employees a voice. Empower them. It doesn't have to be anything really elaborate. It can be as simple as, a couple of texts. How are you feeling? Kind of what's going on with you? What do we do well? What should we start doing? Don't over-engineer it. Just ask the question. You will be so surprised by some of the things that you get back, really and truly. Just what's going well? What could we do better? How are you? That's what I would be saying. If you can do that as a light touch audit, the information that you get out of that, and if you get a shed load of information, you find it kind of a bit difficult to sort of try and look at the themes, check it into ChatGPT and say what are the key themes based on this information, and it will tell you what's the frequency of the responses. You don't need a massive HR team to forensically pore over that information. It gives you the starting point, and then you know what, do it again 6 months later. Are people feeling better or worse? Have you made a difference? It's not always. Sometimes return on investment is really difficult to measure, and actually what you want to know is return on impact. Has this changed something for somebody? Is it better? And that's what I would be suggesting, rather than actually selecting an initiative that might work.
See, mine for me is definitely going to echo leadership. I would definitely say if anyone's investing before you, even if you've got stuff in place, and like what Sophie just said earlier, reevaluate, see how it's working. 100%. Speak to your team, but most importantly, I would invest into some decent leadership training, because this is where I'm finding the biggest problem is, and it always starts from the top because it ripples down. Get your leaders properly trained, whether it be leaders, managers, but also make sure they're equipped with actually being able to have conversations with people skills. That's what I'm saying. They need to be able to understand well-being, mental health, and having these conversations, because I think what Sophie's saying is having conversations are brilliant, but if you've got people from the top who are not going to care what any of that feedback is, it's pretty pointless. So I would definitely say invest into these areas. then you can start looking at what your feedback is, and then you can start working together and putting initiatives in place. What about yourself, Jay? I know you're probably going to like that.
Yeah, no, I'm not. What? No.
I have to go now.
So
I'm ever so sorry, but I have to jump onto another call. But I just thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you all.
Sophie,
okay, take care. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for sticking around a bit. Thank you, Sophie. So yeah, I will finish off. I was actually going to give Sophie's answer. That was originally going to be my answer. It's just talk and listen was going to be my answer. But look, the NHS is struggling to deal with the mental health issues that we're having in the UK. It is massively overburdened. The second biggest support system we have for mental health is EAP currently, and it is failing. It is not good enough. It hasn't been good enough for 10 years. It's getting worse. These bigger companies are collaborating. They're driving down costs. And as a result, less people are using it and the quality is lower. So if you're going to focus on just one initiative, mental, physical, financial, nutritional, emotional, spiritual, whatever it is, I'd say, look, just make sure that the mental health support you have in place is solid, that the providers, the health professionals that are on it are exceptional, that it's easy to access, that people can have ongoing care if they need it, that they can choose the person they're working with. It doesn't need to be us. There are other companies that do this. They're smaller, but they are doing brilliant work. All I want to see in 2025 is a massive dent in that crisis, personally. And I don't care how it happens. I just want to contribute. So that's what I'd say, Kirsty.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you, mate. Echo, totally agreed with you. Does anybody else have any feedback? I mean, there's plenty of people in this room. What would they like to see moving forward based on their organisations, what the trends are? What would you say would be beneficial for your organisation and others moving forward? I bet everybody goes quiet now, Jay.
I mean, we've had some great contributions. So we've had some amazing contribution from you guys. So thank you all so much for being part of it. I'm not actually sure if we're going to get cut off at what time is it in the UK? 2 p.m. But look, I guess we can
you haven't been monsooned out, so there we go.
Yeah. Well, you did lose me for a second. Look, I just want to thank everybody so much for coming. I hope this was valuable. We did record it. We'll with everyone's permission, we'll use it again in some form, whether that's a future LinkedIn Live or we'll use it on somebody's website or something. I think there was so much value here that we need to kind of reuse it and repurpose it. Massive thank you to all of you guys that contributed. Abby, Alice, Dawn, I think the guys in the comments as well. Thank you all so much. Hopefully we can do one again. If there's anything that you would like to discuss, we can put together. If you're sick of Kirsty, we can get rid of her. We can bring someone else in to the conversation. I'm joking. But look, this was really valuable. I think it's a great thing to do at the end of the month. I think in terms of the timing of the year, if we can get the right subjects and we get the right guests and we kind of bring this stuff together and we really open up the conversation, I think there's a lot of value. So thank you, everybody.